Hello and welcome everyone. Today I am delighted to be joined by Dr Lis Kilcourse, who is GP and Sport and Exercise Medicine Registrar. And more importantly, she's just back from her honeymoon. So Liz, thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. How was it?
It was amazing. Yeah, we had the best 2 weeks.
Where did you go?
So we did 10 days in South Africa, and then we finished off with a few days in Dubai just for a bit of rest and relaxation and sunshine afterwards.
Right, yeah, because I was similar to you in terms of we had to put everything back. I was meant to go twice during COVID and it didn't happen.
Okay.
So did you was it Cape Town and then safaris or?
Yeah. So we were probably slightly over ambitious in how much we packed into the 10, 11 days that we had in South Africa, to be honest. It felt a little bit like non-stop, so we were exhausted by the end, but we did Cape Town, Stellenbosch, and then we traveled along the garden route. So we went to Oudtshoorn, Plettenberg Bay and Port Elizabeth, and then we did a safari at the end for 2 nights before we flew out to Dubai.
Nice. Yeah, very envious, very envious. Everyone says Cape Town is like just incredible.
It was amazing. Yeah, we absolutely loved it. Just the whole trip, like you go from Cape Town, which is a very like modern city and almost feels like it could be European. Stellenbosch is again super different. It's like known for its vineyards, so there's a lot of money there, and it's evident there's a lot of money there. But again, it feels very Dutch and almost again like you could be anywhere, but the setting of South Africa is so beautiful. And then once you get onto the garden route, it's much more obvious that you're in Africa, and it was just the most beautiful journey we've ever done. Like it was incredible. Like the scenery was insane. Like you just jaw dropping, and we had to stop the car at a few points and just get out and take loads of photos. So yeah, usually you wouldn't think that like driving for 5 hours in a day would be that much fun, but it was just beautiful. It was incredible.
Great. No, it sounds like you had a perfect honeymoon then. So
Yeah.
that's always good. So I know that you're based in Manchester now, but where are you from originally?
So I am from Cheshire. So yeah, kind of mainly grew up around here, and then I went to university in Newcastle, which is where I met my husband, and then was there for 6 years. Then post medical school, we moved back to Manchester for a couple of years. Then we did some time in London before finally deciding, yeah, actually we want to settle in Manchester. That's where both our families are from. So we've been back here. I think it's about 5 or 6 years now. I sort of forget, but yeah. So Manchester's definitely home.
Where in Cheshire?
Nantwich.
Really? Oh, my girlfriend's from Nantwich.
So, oh no way!
Yeah, she is. So I go there every now and again. Yeah, what a lovely, cute village, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. That's what everyone says about it. Yeah, definitely.
Is it Ginger and Pickle? I don't know if you still go back there anymore.
It is. Yeah. That does still exist. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got to say this is the most random start to any one of these in terms of tourist destinations and towns in Cheshire. But anyway, it's all good. So how come you decided to go into medicine in the first place?
I think I just always wanted to do it, which yeah, like I remember like my mum always says, like even when I was like 2-3 years old, I used to play doctors with her, and like we would kind of like had my little toy doctor's kit and would fix her. And then I remember in year 7 we had to like write what do you want to do when you grow up, and I wrote that I wanted to be a doctor. So yeah, even in year 7, like that was what I wanted to do. And so yeah, I never really thought of doing anything else, I guess. So yeah.
Was that something that had been in the family, or just do you know what the influence was?
I don't really know. Like my aunt went to medical school, but she had family like relatively soon after that, so she never really kind of pursued it. I've got another aunt who's a nurse, and my granny was a nurse, but I don't know. Like when you have to do your personal statement for medical school, my mum was obsessed with casualty when we were growing up. So the first statement of my personal statement was about how my mum was obsessed with casualty. So we sort of joke that maybe that influenced it, but I mean, that's definitely not a real life description of what medical school or being a doctor is like. So yeah, I really don't know. It's just like I always just wanted to do it, I think.
Yeah, Charlie and Duffy. I remember those from really back in the day. I don't know if they're still involved anymore, but and then so did you ever waver at any point? So from year 7, through till, well, now, like, did you ever think, actually, no, I'm not sure?
Yeah, definitely. When I did the year that we did in London, I worked in obs and gynae, and then I came back after that and had a 6 months A&E rotation. And I would say that 18 months was pretty tough. Like, I didn't enjoy obs and gynae, just wasn't the right environment for me at all. Obs and gynae, if you've like, it's women's health, so obstetrics and gynecology, and just the labour ward, it's so fast paced, and or like when stuff happens, it happens, and the emergencies and stuff, it just didn't suit my personality at all. And then I came back and went into A&E, and that also didn't suit my personality, and it was just kind of 18 months of what am I doing. So that, I would say that was a pretty tough time, but other than that, like, I've really enjoyed most of it. It had its ups and downs, but everything does.
So in terms of like personality, what sort of personality do you need to be in those sort of environments then, do you think?
I don't know. Like, I guess you just have to like the buzz of it when things go wrong. So, or when emergencies happen. So in the labour ward, if someone's giving birth and they need an emergency section or something happens, you've got to love the buzz and the adrenaline of that. I guess maybe be a bit of an adrenaline junkie, and that for me, like, oh, I would just want to run away from it. You know, it just wasn't. I just didn't sort of thrive in that environment.
And so did you always have that you wanted to work in sport then, in like that sport and exercise side?
No, I say that came pretty late. Like, I was never really 100% sure what I wanted to do going through university, although probably in hindsight, like, I always had an idea it would be GP. But the idea to go into sports medicine came fairly late on. Like, I was always very sporty growing up, so I've always been involved in sport. I guess I never really imagined that I could work in it. So yeah, that was a bit later to decide, and was almost not a last minute decision, because throughout the time that I was doing my GP training. So if you don't know, like, what, you'd go to medical school, which is 5 or 6 years, and you come out and everyone will do foundation year for 2 years, which I did. And then at that point you can apply for specialty training. And that's when I did a year of obs and gynae, because I'd always sort of thought that maybe that was what I wanted to do. I'd always been interested in women's health, and I'd done some stuff around it at medical school, and then didn't enjoy it. So then after that I was like, okay, GP. And I guess when I was applying for obs and gynae, like, it was a toss up for me at that point between obs and gynae and GP. And we came back to Manchester and I started my GP training then. But I think the other thing I guess there's two sides to sports and exercise medicine. There's the sports side and there's the elite sports side. And then there's also the, like, not lifestyle side, that's the wrong word, but it's fitness and health and well-being for everybody else, which does tie in very nicely to GP. So it was the fact that I was really interested in that, really. And also, having done some obs and gynae with women's sport growing, I was very interested in that too. So I thought, okay, well, I'm enjoying GP once I'd finished my training, but why don't I try and do something a little bit more? And that's when I applied for the sports medicine.
Yeah, there's a lot to consider, isn't there? It's like, how do, like, when you're at Newcastle or whichever course that people go to, do they give you support and advice on doing that, or is it pretty much try it and see what you like?
I think that varies a lot. I would say from my experience was, like, everyone's going to have a very strong opinion about what you should do, and everyone will try and advise you and try and help you. But there's a big difference between what you enjoy in terms of medical school and then the realities of the job. And so I think as much as you can have interest in an area, and there certainly are some people who will always know that they want to be a transplant surgeon, for example, or an orthopedic surgeon, and they'll go all the way through medical school and they'll know that that's what they want to do. And there'll always be people like that. But for other people, and I'd probably include myself in this, like, it takes just a little bit of trial and error to kind of figure out what it is that you enjoy and what you're interested in. And I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that, because you kind of have to try the things that you don't like to perhaps find what you do enjoy.
Yeah. And then is it because you can see, like you mentioned, about the different areas of sport and exercise medicine, of health, then like the weekend warrior type thing, and then there's like the proper top level elite sports. So were there any of those three that you thought, actually, that's going to be my driving force for wanting to do this, or was it a combination of all of them? Like, is elite sport something that you were thinking at that point, yes, I'd love to be involved in that?
Probably a combination of all three. Like, in fact, like, the elite sport has almost felt like the most alien to me, just because although I was always very sporty growing up, like I did a lot of swimming myself, and I've kept kind of going and doing running and triathlons as an adult. Like I'd never had any direct experience in elite sport. So for me, that probably felt the most alien and felt very different from medical school and the NHS. So I found that environment probably like the hardest to like learn, because it's just very different. Whereas more of the weekend warrior and lifestyle side is a bit more familiar. So it was probably the latter two that I was more drawn towards initially. But as I've been going through it, you kind of realize there's so much that you can learn from elite sport that does apply to other areas as well. So I think ultimately all three probably drive me at the moment.
So what are the sort of things then that you think filter down from elite sport into the other two?
So I would say, for example, like if I use a specific example, if you were a weekend runner and you picked up an Achilles injury, so historically the advice on how to manage that would have been around so an Achilles tendinopathy, a lot of stretching, a lot of perhaps rest, maybe some isolated calf raises might be suggested to you from the physio. But actually, more of the evidence now is, well, you really need to load a tendon up really heavily. So, you know, a physio now working with an athlete in the elite, who's like an elite runner, you know, would probably be getting them doing really heavy isometric holds, working through a phased return to sport plan to get them back running again. And that can be filtered down then to a weekend warrior. So rather than someone trying and going and, you know, valiantly doing 15 calf raises a day every single day and not seeing any progress, actually having a rehab plan which progresses through stages of recovery for a tendinopathy.
Yeah. No, you can see that with a lot of the eccentric loading plans on that. And then in terms of like your own sport, so I've checked out some of your stats, and you're obviously a very impressive runner. I'd love to have a 5K time like that. But is that, you mentioned that you've been doing sport your entire life? Like what stage did you start running or doing sport?
So I swam from the age of 9, or probably like, I always had swimming lessons before that, but I think kind of joined a club was like 9. And I swam pretty competitively through till about 15, 16. I then got ill when I was around 15, 16. So I didn't really do very much kind of for the next few years after that. Kept up swimming when I was at university, but not to the level that I was swimming at when I was a teenager. And then sort of the running, like dipped in and out of it, kind of would occasionally enter a half marathon and a marathon and just kind of did it for fun from like my early 20s. And then I did a marathon, I can't remember what year it was now, like 2016 or 2017, and went under 3 hours. And so like from doing that, I kind of started taking it a little bit more seriously and was like, oh, right, I'm quite good at this. Like maybe I'll start kind of putting a little bit more structure into what I'm doing.
So that was what it was. There wasn't like proper training plans, or was it just you were doing this yourself, or what?
So at the time, like I had, when I did the sub 3, that was a while ago now. I think I can't remember what year it was. I think it was about 5 years ago. Like I had some help from the club that I was running with. So there was one of the guys in the club who was like giving me some coaching advice, and I would go out with a group. But didn't have like a formal structured training plan. But after I did that, I actually got injured, and that was one of the first times I met John. Actually, was like the injury that I picked up after that. So then about a year, kind of once I got over that injury, about a year later, I started like with a running coach then.
Right. And then in terms of like your own injuries then, and studying medicine, how helpful has it been in terms of both way around? So helping you running, but also helping your work?
Oh, I think it massively helps. Like, I think like over the years, certainly since I've been doing sports medicine, and my knowledge of injuries has gone up, like it's really helped me to kind of learn how to manage them. I wouldn't always say that I've managed the injuries the best. I don't necessarily know that any athlete does, but like certainly like with the most recent injury that I had, like I was able to try my best to be much more pragmatic about it and be like, right, okay, well, it's going to take this much longer to get ready and to get better, sorry. And like, as it gets better, like this is normal to expect a bit of discomfort after this and not to worry about it. So that's definitely helped. And then I think it's helped me as a doctor in terms of like, I think it's helped me to understand patients a little bit more. Like, you know, what it's like being on the other side. So you know, if someone's upset because they're injured or their training's not going as they would like it to, like, I think I would like to think that I relate and I get that a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. And you can see that the SEM profession is really growing.
Yeah.
How difficult was it to get involved in that in the first place? And that do they give you, like, it's during the interview, are they asking about why you want to do it, what your aspirations are?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess with, again, it kind of goes back to like at medical school, you do like 5-6 years of medical school, and then you do your foundation training, and then you do your application for specialty training. So you have to, before you even get to the point where you're applying, like you have to have done things which will get you points to get an interview. So stuff like I'd done a master's at university, I'd done publications, I'd done audits and presentations like nationally on different things and quality improvement projects, and this kind of like a number of different almost tick boxes that you have to go through, unfortunately, to get points. So I'd done all of that. And then they like to see that there's a link there to sports medicine as well. And some of mine certainly did have a link. And then, yeah, the interview, they're asking you both kind of like why you want to do it and why you think you can do it based on a portfolio of evidence that you've got. And also they have stations that you work around, which will have different scenarios that you may come across in the sporting world. So for example, I had like one on a player with concussion and how you might manage that. And then there was another one which was more of an ethical scenario where I think, if I remember rightly, it was somebody who was taking steroids and how you would manage that if they were like kind of taking an illegal substance, kind of what your management would be. So a combination of asking you what you would do and then giving you different clinical scenarios to check your understanding that you already have of the speciality.
Right. And then, so how many people were started at the same time as you?
I want to say that there was 11 around the country. Yeah.
So it really is it's a very tight-knit community, and some of the other people I've spoken to have said that.
And the thing is as well, like, I definitely feel like there's so much that sports medicine can do within like the NHS, and so we know that so many long-term chronic health problems are helped by being more active and having a better lifestyle, and we know the mental well-being benefits of being active. Yet the funding for sports medicine within the NHS is really small. It's just not really a priority at the moment. And you could argue in that in so many different ways. Obviously, the NHS has got loads of struggling a lot at the moment, so it has to choose what it prioritizes. But yeah, it's a small speciality, and it's a shame that there isn't room for there to be more of us, because I think there's a lot more that we could offer. But as far as I know, like I started in sports medicine in 2020, and they've not had anyone else start in the Northwest since then. So yeah, the numbers are really small.
Really? So were you the only person in that cohort as well then when you did yours?
So I was the only person to get a job in the Northwest, yeah, because they only have one job in the Northwest each year. And then there hasn't been a job open in the Northwest since I started. But I think there's now 5 of us in the Northwest, but it's a 4-year training program. So there's kind of people in different stages at each time.
And then, so from the NHS perspective, what are the sort of things that you're dealing with, and how much of your day is dealing with this in this area?
So again, with the training program, we have to rotate around like a number of different jobs. So just to get the breadth of experience that would be needed to be a consultant. So that means that like I've done work in public health, and I've done work in GP. I'm currently working in orthopedics, and I'll work in musculoskeletal clinics. So kind of like not secondary, they're called tier 2 clinics. So like, say for example, if you see your GP with a musculoskeletal problem, you would then get referred to a tier 2 clinic, and that could be either a sports medicine consultant, or it might be a physio that you would see, or a podiatrist or something, and then they would then refer on to orthopedics, and then some time spent in elite sport as well. So my day-to-day job is more at the moment like working with other specialities to learn to be a consultant. I'd actually say I probably practice more of what I'm talking about in like the GP side of my job. So I say I'm a GP and a sports medicine registrar because I do the sports medicine work part-time in the week, and then I still work as a GP. So it's probably more on my GP days that I'm doing more of the kind of like I don't like using the word lifestyle because it's like lots of like different connotations of what lifestyle medicine can mean, but kind of like talking about health and well-being is probably more on the GP side of my job.
Right. Yeah. So in terms of how people come to find you, because there's so few of you, say in the Northwest or in Manchester, for example, like how does someone come through to you? What would be, is it if I say I've got a certain problem, then it would be allocated specifically for you then?
So not for me right now, because again, like, so when you're a registrar, you can't have patients referred directly to you because part of the being a registrar is your training, so you would be under a consultant. This is what I mean when I say there's so little within the NHS. So sports medicine in general, like there's only one clinic on the NHS that's commissioned at the moment, which is based out of Withington Hospital, which is South Manchester. So yeah. Oh, and they have a clinic that runs in Altrincham as well, but it's the same service, just two different sites. So it's really, really small in the NHS, like, which is what I mean when I say there's just so little of it around because there's so few of us. And also does make it a bit of a postcode lottery because obviously if you live in the south of Manchester, you can see a sports medicine consultant on the NHS, but if you live in North Manchester, then you can't. There are services in Liverpool as well, but I'm like not so familiar with them. And then of course there are consultants that work privately, but you need to have the funding to be able to access them privately.
Yeah, no, it was amazing. I think I had I thought suspected hernia and went to the NHS, and John Rogers was doing the treatment. It was like, how amazing is this? You're actually
Okay.
this is a few years back,
Yeah.
but it was just sort of like, yeah, that how lucky are we to be able to have access to this
Yeah.
for free. But yeah, again, that sounds like an isolated.
Yeah.
Do you think that that may change in terms of funding into this area?
I'd love it to, but like at the moment, it doesn't look. Yeah, it doesn't look like massively likely. I think, hopefully, I think all of us who work in sports medicine like would like there to be more on the NHS, but like it's a combination of funding and numbers and yeah, there's so many challenges in the NHS at the moment in terms of referral waiting times off the back of COVID, getting those numbers down, you know, pressures on A&E and ambulance services, pressures on GP services. So I think, unfortunately, those have to be sorted before they'll perhaps look to develop things further. And um, it's always feels like really complicated trying to explain the NHS. Well, it's such a big thing, isn't it? But like, and services are so different from one area to another. So, and of course, there are physios that you can see for musculoskeletal, and there's a big drive to get more physios working in primary care and things, which is great. But in terms of the sports medicine, working with those physios and having well, yeah, I guess having a more holistic look at a person as to why they may have picked up an injury or something, and or being able to kind of support and lead a team with physios. Hopefully there will be more, but I think yeah, it will take time.
Yeah, I wasn't meaning to put you on the spot in terms of the NHS structures.
Trying to like explain it without making it sound really complicated, but it is really complicated. So.
Yeah, no. Again, I've worked with it for a long time, so it was. I still, that's why I'm genuinely interested in so how different things come about. But just going back to in terms of when you started, then, so was there a particular reason that you wanted to do Newcastle?
Medicine. I liked the city when I went and had a look at it. So my dad will laugh at me, which is why I'm laughing, because he says that when we were looking at universities, I said I didn't want to go to Southampton because it was too far away, but then chose to go to Newcastle. So like, my dad always jokes that sometimes I have a slightly twisted logic to the decisions that I make, and he's probably right. So when I was picking this is probably some of the twisted logic. I knew I wanted to do medicine, but I chose not to do biology A level. So, which was because the school that I went to was quite a long way away for sixth form, and I wanted the least amount of coursework, so I didn't do biology. So that sort of limited the options of where I could apply a little bit. So I had to pick universities where you didn't have to have biology A level. So Newcastle was one of them. And then when we went to look around, I just really, really liked the city. I got a really good vibe from it. It's a small city, but you kind of got that mixture of having a small city campus vibe while actually being in the city as well. So yeah, I just really liked it.
Yeah, wasn't the big market then. It wasn't.
I liked the big market a lot when I was a student, but I didn't know about it before I went there.
And then for the next steps that you took, so once you'd finished it at Newcastle, then, so did you have a plan that you thought, yes, I know roughly what I want to do, or were you still then just going to say work through your placements and see where
Yeah.
it took you?
So at that point, like, I thought I wanted to do like obs and gynae and women's health. So I tried to get an obs and gynae job in my first 2 years, but I didn't get an obs and gynae job. I did get a job in sexual health. So I had that in the first 2 years. But beyond that, no, I really didn't know. And I think all my thoughts were at that stage were like, how do I survive my first 2 years of being a doctor?
And so, how did you do that then? So, what did that entail?
So I don't really know how I did it looking back. It's so me and my at the time he was my boyfriend, like now he's my husband. Like we moved back from Newcastle together, but we chose not to live together at that time. I just don't think we were quite ready. And also his hospital that he was in was a bit further away, so it would have been quite a long commute if we'd lived together. So I moved in with some other junior doctors as well. So they were definitely a source of support. And I actually had a really, really good group of friends in my first 2 years of being a doctor. So I think they were probably the reason that I survived it. And a few nights out and yeah, just generally try not to take life too seriously when it's quite challenging.
So, where was that then?
So that was at Stockport.
Right, Stepping Hill.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so from going from there, like, you know, hearing the stories, you do get lumbered with a lot of like the challenging roles, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But then from that 2 year period, does that give you a really good idea of saying, yeah, actually, I think I'm getting more of an idea of what I maybe don't want to do rather than what I do want to do?
I don't think it did for me. I think from my first 2 years, I found them amazing in that like I had such a good group of friends and I think we just had like a really good time and I had money for the first time and all of that kind of stuff. But like some of the hospital jobs I did, just I didn't like, wouldn't say that it's just really hard. You're just thrown in at the deep end. And I don't think anything can ever prepare you for being stood in a hospital at 3 o'clock in the morning with your bleep going off where there's three people who are critically unwell in different parts of the hospital at once and you're not really sure which one to go to first and coming onto on-call shifts with a list of 100 jobs to do around the hospital and 13 hours on your feet running around and like not having chance to eat and drink and all of that kind of stuff that like every single junior doctor will go through. So I don't think there's anything. Yeah. So yeah, for me, it was just more about kind of like learning to be a doctor. I don't think really at the end of that time I knew what worked for me and what I wanted to do.
So it literally was just getting through it and then seeing what happened next.
Yeah, yeah. The actual job. So um you did a mixture of hospital, then a couple of community jobs. And my favorite jobs from that time were the sexual health job, which I really enjoyed, and the GP job that I did. I think the GP job that I did, I had a really lovely GP surgery and they were very, very supportive. I was probably useless, but they were really lovely to me and really, really nice. And that was the first job I remember feeling I had a bit of confidence in myself. Like up until that point, I had no confidence in myself at all. So I really, really enjoyed that. And I guess that kind of comes back to my personality and realizing what sort of jobs that I did enjoy. So perhaps at that stage, I was realizing that kind of being in a community setting suited me more. And that was somewhere that I felt happier, which has kind of followed me through really. But I wouldn't really say that I'd figured that out properly at that stage.
Yeah. And so how did the next?
Some people do, I just didn't.
Yeah. So how, for you then? So how did the next roles come about then?
So my now husband always knew he wanted to do sports medicine. So my husband is sports medicine as well. So he knew that he wanted to go to London to do the masters. So we knew that we were going to go to London. I had always thought I wanted to do obs and gynae, so I applied for a job in London, which was a year job doing obs and gynae to get that experience. And because I'd enjoyed the sexual health side of what I'd done, the job that I applied for also came with some community obs and gynae as well. So I was lucky enough to get that job. So I took that for a year as a sort of, well, I'm not really sure what I want to do. I'm not sure if I want to do obs and gynae or GP, so I'll take a job for a year and see if I like it. So that was sort of what we did next.
Right. And then, so was there any competition between you guys? Are you both looking to get into it? Did he influence you in terms of wanting to do SEM?
He never kind of encouraged me to do it. And like when we finished our GP training, he applied for it while we were still GP trainees, and he got the job that year, and I didn't, because I still wasn't really sure. So I still had the idea when I finished my GP training. I knew I wanted to. I think I knew I wanted to do something more, but I wasn't sure whether I wanted to do like be a GP with special interest in women's health. I'd started doing more of my own sport, and so I was like, oh yeah, I'm interested in working in this, and then the kind of like lifestyle things I've spoken about earlier. But I wasn't necessarily sure that I wanted to go back to being a trainee and back to kind of doing the training program and be a consultant. So it took me a bit of time to decide about that. But when we finished training as GPs, I was working as a locum in GP, and I just couldn't envisage myself being a GP full time. Like I just couldn't see it. So when it came around to applying for jobs, I just thought, oh, well, I'll apply. And I didn't really expect to get the job, to be honest. Like I wasn't thinking that I would get it. It was a bit of a surprise when I did. I sort of thought, oh, I'll apply, and then I'll have a few more years to work as a GP and build up my CV, and then I can apply for it again in a few years' time. So, but maybe subconsciously, because I was living with him and seeing what he was doing, that was helping me without me even realizing it. I don't know.
What was it about the GP that you thought you didn't really? I thought you think you could do it full time.
It's just such a busy job, and I just looked at GPs who were like, I mean, at the time, like I just turned 30, so I looked at GPs who were like kind of like 5, 6, 7, 8 years ahead of me, and they just all seemed so tired and a bit burnt out, and like I was just didn't want that to be me. And also like I felt like, because I'd done a little bit of sport, like with some things I was like, oh, I think there's a bit more that you could do here. Do you know, like I don't know, I just felt like there was more that I wanted to learn and understand. So
Yeah. And do they ever give you feedback when you got accepted onto the SEM thing in terms of why you did get it, or
no, I don't know. They give you get your scores from the interview, but they never tell you why you got it. No.
And do you have to talk about do they ask you in terms of have you got aspirations to work in any professional sport? Do you have to talk through how you envisage it playing out?
Yes, you do. And I have sometimes wondered if maybe this helped me, because what they don't want is people who want to go and work in football or rugby, which I have no interest in. Like I have absolutely no issues with people that do enjoy football and rugby, and that's what they want to do. And obviously they're the two biggest sports in this country. But like I knew that I didn't want to work in that. So I do sometimes wonder if like I said that I wanted to work in women's health and sport, and that was something that I was really interested in. And I said I was really interested in exercise medicine and lifestyle interventions. So maybe it was the fact that I was interested in something different.
Yeah. Why didn't you fancy football or rugby?
Just don't interest me. And I think maybe as well, like a lot of those, so certainly pitch side stuff, it goes back to that kind of emergency management, which I already know that I don't like, because I didn't like it in A&E and obs and gynae. And I think to really want to work in, I mean, I could be proved wrong, but I think to really want to work in football or rugby, you've got to love those sports, and it's a life style, isn't it? And I can watch a game of football, but it's certainly not, just not my thing.
Yeah, and how many, like you say, they're really dominant, particularly football in terms of professional sport. How big are the opportunities in elite sport outside of those sports?
I guess I think there are lots of opportunities. I think it just depends what your driver is. Like you might not earn as much money, but if that's not a driver for you, then I think there's lots of work out there. And if anything, possibly more if the competition is less. So there's certainly like, lots of jobs. I don't know if you've heard of the English Institute of Sport. So each of the kind of like British Triathlon, British Swimming, British Athletics, they'll have doctors that work for them. Smaller sports like boxing and canoeing. Boxing's probably not a smaller sport, it's probably a bad example, but so there are lots of other opportunities out there that people might not consider.
Yeah, we do work with James Brown, who's a great guy in British athletics.
Yeah.
Yeah, Yeah, no, it definitely is. It seems to be really growing, which is great, and it's just quite interesting hearing the dynamic of everyone was automatic. As soon as you mention sport, you think of Olympics, football, all of those things, but how it filters down into everyday people is it's really interesting dynamic, and it's great to hear that it's been thought of for health and well-being. Because, like you say, there's people are living longer and developing all of those areas. And it's always we've always found it really interesting where in like the NHS, when I started working in this area 15 years ago, there was loads of rehab funding for that. There seemed to be a lot more, and it seemed to really drop off.
Okay.
And then in COVID, it feels like people are thinking, actually, no, we do need to condition people, get them back to activities of daily living. Have you seen any of that throughout your training and career?
So that's quite interesting that you say that, because I don't think I've been doing it long enough to see that yet. Like I know people will often say if you speak to a GP that's approaching retirement, like they'll probably say like that they see things come around in cycles when it comes to funding, and a lot of that's influenced by government and stuff. And I'd say I've probably not been in it long enough to see that yet. So it's good to hear that you say that you're aware of things going in the right direction again, because hopefully they are. So yeah.
Yeah, it seems to be. It does seem to be, and it's such a massive organisation, isn't it? And how anyone can try and organise that in a really efficient way it's almost impossible, isn't it, to do it? But it definitely does seem like there's people thinking, yeah, we need to invest in rehab and getting people fit to work or live, which is quite exciting. But then in terms of you, then, so what would you say the biggest challenge has been for you to date in what you've done? I know it's very early in your career, but I'm sure you've had a few.
What's been the biggest challenge? I would say probably doing A&E. That was probably like number one. And then I think I found the transition into sports medicine has been much harder than I anticipated. Yeah, it's been, again, it's just a very different world. And I think kind of almost having to open your mind up a little bit sometimes to things and challenge your thoughts and beliefs has been, yeah, like that's been a challenge. And but I think it's been a worthwhile one, definitely.
Yeah, you got to have, you got to take the rough with the smooth, haven't you? I guess
Yeah,
some of
yeah,
those ones can help.
yeah, definitely.
And then in terms of when you're looking at things as well, how important to you is you hear a lot about in business or so on, like team culture. So it's not just about the role that you're doing, but it's about the team that you work with and the environment you're in. Does that play a part when you're looking at new opportunities or wanting to be involved?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. Like I think again, kind of going back to me being a training program, sometimes at this stage, like I don't have that much influence over what I do because I have to meet a certain number of criteria to be a consultant. So that means I have to work in teams that wouldn't be my first choice. And that has been something that I have found challenging, but equally like I see that as like a learning opportunity in the sense that like you learn through that what makes a good team and what doesn't make a good team. So there have been some departments I've worked with which have been brilliant and really supportive, and I've really enjoyed that. And then there have been others where, you felt undervalued, or there's perhaps not quite a bullying culture, but it's, not as friendly a place to work in. And I think at this stage that I'm at, I think it's been more kind of learning and realizing, okay, well, what environments do you feel like help you to thrive and do well and enjoy your job, and what less so?
And is there something when you were going into either of those good or bad environments, is that dictated by any one thing? Is it like the person in charge, or is it just a general group thing? Like, is there anything that you could pinpoint to say what affects that?
I would definitely say for me, like having so yes, I think the person in charge is really important, because I think like if there's a good leader or leaders, it does influence everyone around them. I guess it's people being open to ideas and being supportive, probably. So kind of friendly, welcoming, open to new ideas, supportive of new people coming into that environment, but also like having a clear direction and giving a clear idea of what that department does and what service it is that they offer. So that combination of those two. For me, my experience over the last 9 years of working has been a mix of genders and a mix of ethnicities is a really good thing for any department. So obs and gynae, which was very female heavy, I found that quite difficult. And orthopedics, when I've done that, which has been very male heavy, I found that quite difficult as well, because I just think the kind of combination of having a good mix of men and women, it makes for a healthier department. And then, of course, the department having a good culture of kind of leadership and being open and supportive and things like that.
Yeah, yeah. And is it easy to establish that when you're going into a role? It's quite hard, isn't it, when you're in an interview or spending time with these people?
Yeah, I think I'm probably not at the stage yet where like I would have enough influence over anything like that. Like I said, so our training, we have rotations that we kind of have to go to. So you as I get through it, I can have a little bit more of a say, like, because I know that I want to work in women's health, so I can have conversations with my supervisors and be like, kind of create more roles where I'm doing more of that. And the area I'm interested in peds, so can I kind of do a little bit more of the pediatric sports medicine and things. And so can have a little bit more of a say in what I do, but generally speaking, there's certain criteria that have to tick off, so I can't really influence stuff. But I just think I can learn and then feed back to the people that are supervising us in sports medicine about what's been good and what's been not so good.
Yeah. No, well, so, and do you have a particular vision of where you want to end up with your own career?
I get asked this question a lot, and I think so. I think I'm not sure at the moment. I think definitely the one concept for me has been working in women's health. So I'm really hopeful that I could create something in that around Manchester. And I think women's sport is growing a lot at the moment. And with that, it's going to be more opportunities, more time for research, more understanding of how women are different in sport and how they're the same and similar. So I really hope that I can work in that. I've enjoyed doing pediatrics, so possibly looking at something in that as well. And I hope that I can keep up some GP too, but it may be that kind of what I do at the start of my career is quite different to what I do towards the end of it.
In terms of like people that have been influential of making you interested in those sort of areas, are there any particular people that have had a real impact in an influence on you?
Well, John Rogers, who's spoken about before, definitely. Like I sat in with him a couple of times when I was GP registrar, and like kind of he was like supportive in terms of me applying for sports medicine. There's been a couple of female consultants. So there's a lady called Nikki Key, who does a lot of research into relative energy deficiency in sport, and I've heard her talk a couple of times, and I found her like really kind of inspiring and what she does and kind of her passion for Red S. There's a consultant down in London called Amal Hassan, who is doing a lot of work in London to develop women's sport, women's health services, not just for elite athletes, but for women in general, kind of like postpartum, if they've, kind of getting back into kind of wanting to be fit and active and healthy again. So I think those three have probably influenced me.
Yeah. And you envisage being it? And who, sorry?
And my husband.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you've got to say that one. Yeah, good.
Yeah.
And do you envisage continuing with your sport as well then?
Hope so. Yeah, like it's going really well at the moment. So I'm hoping that I can continue that. Like it's been a challenge. It's definitely been a challenge balancing them both. So that's kind of probably where some of the uncertainty comes from, is that I certainly don't feel like I'm in a rush, and I just want to enjoy each stage as it comes and kind of see what opportunities come my way and how that can go. But yeah, I think we just have to take, at the moment, I'm just trying to take each year as it comes.
What do you do, park runs?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, I've just started doing them recently. I despise it the entire way round, but you do feel good at the end of it.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's great initiative though, isn't it? So is that something that was influenced by from that NHS people in terms of it? It's amazing that the one in Fletcher Moss that I do, it's like 200 people there pretty much every week, it seems.
I did the Fletcher Moss one actually the weekend before I went on my honeymoon.
Mhm.
Yeah. So initially it was a totally different setup. So it was set up by I can't remember the name of the guy that set it up, and it was completely separate to the NHS. They just wanted to get people kind of active on a Saturday, and it's just kind of grown exponentially. But they do now have links with the RCGP, so any general practice can establish network links with their local park run and refer patients to the park run.
All right, no, that's really good. Yeah, I really think it's amazing. Like, it's just the number of volunteers there. It's really professionally done, getting your time and everything. So it's definitely, I'm a big advocate for it, even though I despise it every step of the way. But yeah, and then finally, just I'm always intrigued as to what professional development things you do for yourself outside of medicine. So are there any particular books that you read that you inspire you or
What do I do outside? I have read kind of like books in the past. I'm just trying to think of examples. I would say kind of like more for me, just kind of having time to switch off is probably the more important. If I'm being like totally honest, like I wish I could say that I like read loads of books, but me and my husband, we have a dog, so I love walking him. I'm close to my family, so I like kind of seeing my parents and spending time with them. I've got a really good group of friends up in Manchester, so I like being able to see them and kind of do stuff which is completely not related to sports medicine or to my own sport. So I think that's probably the healthier thing for me. Yeah.
Yeah, no, sounds like it. Sounds like it. No, I've really enjoyed it, and I apologise for the grilling. I've grilled you on a few different
No,
subjects.
it's
And
okay. I guess I
um,
think I've sort of, I always feel like it's really confusing kind of how doctor training works. And, I've been a doctor for like 9, 10 years or something. Yeah, I'm still a trainee. So yeah, I hope everything I've said has made sense.
no, it does. It does. I'm still, again, I've been involved in this area for 15 years, and I'm still always trying to understand how things work. But no, it's that was really helpful, and it's good to hear like the different motivations as to what's made you choose to do what you're doing. So no, I really appreciate your time. Good luck with the running and the try, and good luck with the career.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thanks, Liz. Cheers.